Hello everyone, welcome back to D Squared Stories, an audio fiction podcast bringing you short serialized weekly stories. We are continuing on with our next chapter of Canaveral Academy for Challenged Youth. Without any further ado, let's get into a quick recap and then get started. Last time, in the hallowed campus of Canaveral Academy, a Christian boarding school for delinquents, Francis and Rachel were caught by student officer Judah, sneaking out together at night, and were subjected to a cruel punishment by Headmaster Peter. The next day, Francis was thrown in the cage, and Judah was scolded for his weakness as he was instructed to start strength training. In class, Mr. Jim displayed a grotesque interest in the young Rachel, and after escorting her to the restroom, female student officer Mary barely quelled an attempted rebellion by the students. Mr. Jim was stabbed, and Francis was let out of the cage as mayhem overtook the campus just as the new arrivals showed up at Canaveral. However, in spite of all of the chaos, all students were eventually accounted for. But the same could not be said for Mr. Jim, who was found in the classroom, bleeding out from additional stab wounds, as the words lust and abuse were written on the chalkboard in his blood. Chapter 2. Investigation Day.
"Please, have a seat, Miss Mary,"
the headmaster said. He said this from behind his large oak desk office. The back wall of his office had 2 windows, and where there was a blank space, he had his military medals and other various awards and accomplishments. A photo of himself with the new Pope John Paul II was framed and displayed proudly on his front desk. Mary noted the picture, recalling that Peter was not born Catholic. Only a couple of members of the staff even were. Most prominently, though, a large axe was bolted into the wall, seemingly unable to be removed, unless one had a key to undo the locks holding the bolts in place. He folded his hands and politely stared at the young woman as she took her seat across the desk.
"Miss Mary Modi," he said in an almost sing-song voice. "I take it a smart girl like you knows why you are here."
She nodded. "I broke the rules of assembly and ran off after Judah."
He said. "So you like to tell the truth, but only the parts that give you the best light. Any other reasons you'd like to add?"
She sat calm and collected. The intense gaze and questioning of the headmaster failed to even move her heart rate by a beat. He could tell, as she held her wrist gently on her lap. "I am also therefore unaccounted for at the time of Mr. Jim's death," she said. "Sir, I don't mean to be insubordinate. You know I never do. But you know I did not do that." He nodded.
"I know, Miss Mary, I know. However, an investigation must be done, and you, Miss Rachel, and Master Francis are the only people who were not under direct supervision at the time of the murder. And unfortunately, the time frames of where they were found, Master Francis's physical condition, and Miss Rachel's state of mind also don't lend themselves to being likely candidates. How do you expect me to convince someone like Miss Jamie that you are not the most likely subject?"
Mary nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps we should not be focusing on convincing Miss Jamie. Maybe we should examine why it took her over an hour to get to the north fence, when it's at most a 15-minute jog. She had a bike too, if I recall?"
"Resourceful and attentive to detail as always, Miss Mary," he said. "You always know exactly what to say. No doubt you are tuned into the rumors that Miss Jamie is one of the least popular among my staff for her aggressive attitude."
He made one of his uncommon, gentle smiles. He looked softly at Mary, with undoubtedly more respect than he ever gave to Judah, much to the young man's chagrin. He tapped his fingers together as he pondered this. He shook his head.
"I have the same issue with her that I have with you, though," he said. "I know she didn't do it. Unfortunately, I know she doesn't have the slightest clue who did it. You, though, I am less certain of. And because of that, I have to lead with the logical conclusion that you're the only one who could have done it."
Mary slightly gritted her teeth and nervously wrung her hands. She seemed desperate. She thought going into this she had more control over the situation than she did. "Mr. Jim was covered in blood, and there was blood all over the classroom," she said. "Explain to me how Miss Andrea found me in the cafeteria with not a drop of blood on my hair or my clothes." Peter shook his head.
"That is the problem, Miss Mary. I don't need to do that. This is not a court system. I don't need evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. As long as I can't reasonably doubt anyone else, it will have to be you. Someone must pay the price.
Mary sighed. She frowned and looked back at the headmaster. Peter squinted. For some reason, she seemed not like a man at the gallows. He thought her expression was more that of a cornered rat, a creature that avoided fighting, but did what it had to when necessary. He put together why as she started to speak again. "I am not the only one in reasonable doubt," she said. "No one knows where Judah went in between the gym and the cafeteria." Peter paused. He seemed genuinely stumped by this. He knew, one moment, he was exercising with Judah, but left him behind when the bus of new students arrived. The next time he was seen, he was in the cafeteria, found by Miss Andrea. No one thought the twerp of a student officer, barely able to curl 15-pound dumbbells and who lived for the approval of the headmaster, would be capable of doing this, so it was not considered. Though, however improbable, he now had to compare it against the nearly equal improbability that a 17-year-old girl had done it instead. Peter noted how Mary acted. She had gambled everything on a pair of jacks and looked quite nervous about it. He was aware that Mary was the only one aside from himself who genuinely cared for Judah's well-being. Peter was sure part of her must have hoped she could wriggle out of this without having to put him in the line of fire. But when her own neck was on the line, she did this. The only thing Peter was unsure of, in fact, was whether or not this was an action done to muddy the water and cover her tracks, or if she truly believed or knew that he did it and was just trying to maintain enough ambiguity to protect both of them.
"I see," he said. "Well, thank you for your time, Miss Mary. If I have any additional questions, we will reach out to you."
He ushered her out of his office and walked down to the cafeteria. He left her to go eat lunch with her fellow classmates under the supervision of Sister Teresa. The sister sat on a stool, by a string connected to the bell system. She smiled upon all of the students as they enjoyed their lunch. Her affiliation with the school was a strange one. Technically not staff, she was a longtime friend of Peter's. She originally had endorsed his idea for a rehabilitative school for troubled youth. However, she was appalled as the design for its true nature became clear. She was disgusted as it started, and more so as Peter's cruelty seemed to increase. Her kindness towards the students made her a favorite of some, especially when proctoring something like lunch. Others believed her to be a facade of a kindly old woman, as she had no issue ringing the bell if one tried to leave or got out of hand. They also questioned how anyone of good moral conscience could allow what was happening and not go to the authorities. Peter too wondered why she never did, despite her adamant disagreements with how he handled things. He went down the hallway and towards the meeting room where 9 other staff members waited for him. He had hardly entered the room before Miss Jamie shouted at him. "You useless old crone," she said. "You didn't punish her, did you? We should put her to death."
"Jamie, come on. You know we can't do that," Mr. Phillips said.
"Someone explain to me why we can't," Mr. Matthias said. The amusingly named math teacher, the youngest of the staff here with curly brown hair and brown eyes, was fired from a Catholic school for beating a student within an inch of their life after finding out they were homosexual. Needless to say, when the story made headlines, Peter was quick to recruit him to the team.
"We don't even know that she did it. That should be a good start. Then follow it up with we can't kill people?" Mr. Tom said.
Mr. Tom, a tall and pale red-headed man with blue eyes in his 30s, handled many of the facilities and administrative needs of the school. He also fancied himself a chef. Normally, he had more patience and less snark, but after continuously cooking for over 30 students, only 2 days after his colleague died, he was less himself than usual. "I reckon we can do whatever we want," old Johnny said. "Not like anything we do in these halls has ever been legal. Who's gonna tell?" Old Johnny was a maintenance man and patroller when his first function was not needed. He was in the same command as Peter during World War II. The balding old man said the last part of this sentence with a bit of accusatory malice. "I think some of us draw the line at killing children, Johnny," Miss Andrea said. The nurse and science teacher had brown hair put up in a tight bun most days. One of her eyes was brown and the other was blue, though, due to a surgery complication a few years back, her brown eye was usually swollen shut most of the time. On her worst days, she covered this with an eye patch or sunglasses. Some were surprised to see today she had not.
"I am one of those people, but I can tell some of you aren't. After all, some of us clearly didn't mind getting it on with them," Mr. Bart said. "Mr. Bart, you bite your tongue," Peter said.
Bart, the bearded man, a college dropout, almost laid back in his chair nonchalantly in the meeting. His large muscular build, with dark brown skin, made him an easy target for profiling in a murder case. And despite rumors of tampered evidence and exonerating DNA evidence, his incompetent lawyer forced him into a plea deal. In the 10 years after, Canaveral was the only job he could find himself, cleaning up after real delinquents. He scoffed at the headmaster. "Pete, I don't know what you want from me," he said. "All of us who want freaks to our core, which I know might be less than I hope, saw that lunatic inching towards that. The only question was what were we going to do to stop it, and it looks like someone took care of answering that." "You make it sound like you might have been the person who did so," Mr. Matthias said. Mr. Bart glared at him. Miss Jamie shot up from her chair and yanked on her hair. Stop it, she said. "We finally have the goody-goody two-shoes exposed for who she really is. Don't let her wriggle out of it now. She has no alibi. He's always gone soft on her. Now's our chance to not let him get away with that." Headmaster Peter stared back at Jamie, who shot daggers at him with her eyes. His brow furrowed in confusion for a moment. "That is true," Miss Andrea said. "You never once beat that girl, not even a tap for her minor discretions." "What do you want her punished for? That girl is incapable of doing wrong," Mr. Tom said. "If anything, I worry we're not doing enough to consider those amongst our own ranks, especially those with a history of this sort of thing." He eyed Mr. Bart, who looked ready to stand up and physically confront him. However, the tension was broken by the headmaster.
"Where is Mr. Thad?"
The headmaster looked around the room, seeing his English teacher completely missing from the scene here. They had coordinated this meeting in between patrols, just so they could get everyone in the same spot, but he seemed to be missing before Peter had entered. Out in the cafeteria, the children quietly muttered to themselves. The staff attempted to suppress the news of Mr. Jim's death, but there was no way to keep something like that secret. The students gossiped among one another. "It has to be Francis," one girl said. "He got his revenge against the school for that beating." "There's no way," Rebecca said. "You didn't see what the headmaster did to him. He could barely walk. He was in no shape to take on a fully grown man." They argued amongst themselves more. Rachel looked at Mary, who sat eating her lunch, the others having finished while she was being investigated. Rachel seemed to almost zone out while looking at Mary, seeming to have something to say. But whenever Mary would look at her, she would just avert her gaze. After a few moments of this, Mary leaned in to whisper to her. "Stop it," she said. "I didn't do it. If you keep acting like this, I'm going to get punished." Rachel shook her head. "You're the only one I told about this. You're the only one who knew. It's okay. I think it's good." She grabbed Rachel's wrist and almost twisted it. Rachel was shocked, never having seen Mary get aggressive like this before. "Everyone knew this was happening, Rachel," she said. "It was as clear as day." She still stared back at her longingly, but this seemed to quiet her for now. Among the boys, they were slightly roughhousing with each other, taking the opportunity they had to be a little active without any of the stricter staff overseeing them. One of them had their stomach growl loudly. "Ugh, I'm so hungry," Javier said. "Eat your damn vegetables then, newbie," Paul said. "That's all we've been stuck with since apparently the meat shipments have been going missing." "I hate veggies. And you seriously only get a turkey leg a day while here?" he asked. "I can't do that. I need my meat. I'm a growing man." "That's the rules, Javier," Judah said. "Even the faculty only gets the same meat allowance that we do." "Stuff it, dork," Francis said. It hurt Francis to speak, with the wounds on his face still healing, and he only joined in to tell Judah to shut up every time that he spoke. Judah growled, but this only seemed to make the others laugh at him more. "He's a man of principle, isn't he?" Javier asked. "By the way, dork, why can't you be cooler like Mary? She was a better student officer to me in 5 minutes than you were for 2 days. "Yeah, it sucks she's going to get beaten to death because someone from the faculty is trying to pin their murder on her," Paul said. "What did she even say to you? I was so sure based on how you were acting on day 1 that you were going to end up in the cage fast." Javier reluctantly picked at his veggies. "She pointed out that I turn 18 in 2 months. I'll be the shortest time ever here at Canaveral if I just keep my head down." "Lucky dog. This is just summer camp for you." "So you don't even care to try to come out of this a better person? You're just going to continue to be a delinquent?" Judah asked. A bit of broccoli slapped Judah in the face after he was done talking. Francis had used his fork to catapult it right into his face. "I said, stuff it, dork." The other boys started to laugh and pushed Judah around a bit. There was the loud sound of Sister Teresa clearing her throat. As they all turned her attention to her, she held the string of the bell system tightly. "Francis?" His name was the only thing she needed to say to quiet them down. She rarely rung the bell on any of them, but also people rarely pushed her towards doing it. Francis just went to picking at his food quietly, seeming to still wince in pain every time he moved his mouth. All of a sudden, the headmaster came barging down the hallway. He went over to a single locked stall bathroom, one reserved for staff. He put his key into it and turned the knob to open the door. The students sat up in the chairs, craning their necks over one another as additional staff came following, but less purposefully, as if they were confused. They heard a scream of rage from the bathroom. Several of the male faculty went in behind Peter, and what they saw terrified them. Mr. Thad was hunched over and pale on the toilet, his body completely lifeless. The headmaster pushed his way back out of the bathroom to ring the bell.
"Assembly at once," he yelled.
The students, equal parts scared of him and what happened, hardly needed to be ushered by the staff. This was good timing as the faculty was quite rattled and hardly able to focus on assembling the students. They started filing out of the room. But before fully out, Peter grabbed Judah by the shoulder.
"You with me,"
he said. He turned to the others.
"Assemble the students, and the rest of you examine the scene for any clues. Master Judah and I are going to investigate Mr. Thad's dorm."
He started to drag the student by the arm, out of the cafeteria and across the campus to the teacher lodges. Judah's hand almost turned white from how hard the headmaster squeezed it. He had to lightly jog to keep up with the man with the artificial leg and cane as he frantically pulled him across the campus. "Headmaster, I don't understand. What is going on?" Judah asked. "Why are you taking me with you and none of the other teachers?"
"There is a traitor amongst my ranks, Master Judah," he said. "I was unsure of it at first, but now there can be no room for doubt. Tricky, tricky devil. Almost had me suspect one of the students was capable of this. But now, I know for sure there is no way."
Judah continued stumbling as he was dragged into an unassuming lodge. The living space smelled foul immediately upon entry. Peter seemed unfazed by this, but with his free arm, Judah had to move his hand to cover his face. Mr. Phillip's possessions laid about the room messily. In a corner of the room, there was a concealed refrigerator. He opened it up to find several pieces of meat, desserts, and other high-scarcity food items on campus. The headmaster examined them closely, smelling them. He stared for a while at a piece of cake that seemed to have an injection on it. "Why does Mr. Thad have all this food?" Judah asked.
"This buffoon has been stealing it away for months now," he said. "Every time he is on receiving duty, the truck mysteriously shows up with much less than it is supposed to."
He shook his head and whiffed around in the air, trying to figure out where the smell was coming from. He finally let Judah go as he began to pull some smelly clothes off furniture. He continued speaking.
"That is why it must be someone on the faculty. No student would know about his transgressions. And more importantly, no student would have known the schedule to be able to poison him."
With one sudden pull, a jacket revealed 2 slices of cake on the floor. The slices were a kind of apple cake, old and spoiled. Peter's brow furrowed and his eye twitched as he saw them. In the icing on top of the slices, 2 separate words were written. One said gluttony, and the other said thief. With a guttural grunt of anguish, the headmaster stomped his foot, crushing both of them underneath him.
"This sadistic and petulant fiend," he said. "He or she seems to relish in this killing. Judah, who do we know on the staff who takes joy in harming others?"
"Miss Jamie," he said without hesitation.
Yes, my student. She is quick to violence, revels in revenge. But how can I tie her to this scene?" he asked. "Never mind. I have no time for due process. I must rid myself of her before she can get to anyone else."
"Headmaster." Judah said this and looked up at him with worried eyes. Peter stared at him and nodded for him to speak. "I agree Miss Jamie is something of a sadist. However, her aggression has always been more targeted at the female students than anyone else. Additionally, given that, what motive would she have for going after Mr. Jim?" Peter paused and seemed to consider this. He thought about the 2 different crimes that the perpetrator seemed to be punishing the victim over. Miss Jamie had been in hot pursuit of Rachel as well. There was certainly time for her to do both, but he could not measure what the likelihood was. He was stuck in this trance of thought when Judah continued. "There seems to be a twisted moral motivation behind these killings," he said. "The killer seems to be punishing the hypocrisy of the faculty. Is there anyone who would want to do that among you?"
"Mr. Bart."
The words slipped out of the headmaster's mouth, having meant to keep them internally. Nonetheless, he carefully considered this. He could not recall what Mr. Bart was doing at the time of the first murder. He thought how it would be another person that people would easily believe would be guilty if he decided to pursue it. It was a bit more dramatic of a move, though. Mr. Bart was more of a collected person than to kill someone over some stolen food. That would be an erratic move, a kind of insanity he had not seen since... Peter placed the jacket back down over the crushed cake slices. He looked solemn and gestured for Judah to come with him.
"Come, Master Judah. I now know what must be done."
Back in his office, a few hours later, just as dusk was starting to fall, Peter examined a few handwritten papers in front of him. Some of them were documentation, pieces of info, such as times of the murder and locations of others. He attempted to create a matrix to rule some people out absolutely and move some people into a category of highly capable. He heard a knocking at the door. With that, he put some of the papers in his desk and called out.
"Please come in."
Miss Jamie and Miss Andrea entered the room. Miss Andrea looked deeply concerned, while Miss Jamie had an agitated look on her face. Miss Andrea had some papers in her hands and laid them down at the desk as they both sat down.
"The toxicology, Miss Andrea?"
he asked. She sighed. "It's not really a toxicology report. I'm a nurse and a science teacher with a classroom lab, not a forensic tech with a real one." The headmaster's facial expression hardly changed from its stone-cold demeanor. She saw she was not getting through to him. "That being said, the symptoms appearing are fairly similar to those of arsenic poisoning. We do have high enough concentration at the lab for someone to inject enough to be lethal. The other slice you showed us also did appear to be injected with it." "You give the spoiled brat the keys to the lab, or just your bedroom, Pete?" Miss Jamie said. As if on a hairpin trigger, the headmaster swung his cane into her face and knocked her out of her seat. Miss Andrea jumped at the sudden act of blatant violence. To her surprise, Miss Jamie wasted no time in getting back up and into her seat, as she cackled slightly. A red welt appeared across her face, but did nothing to impede her smile as she straightened back up. "How long have you been holding that one in?" she asked. "Whatever happened to no violence between staff members?" Peter growled lowly.
"I have half a mind to think all of my problems right now would be resolved if I beat you to death with this cane, Miss Jamie. I highly advise you refrain from making me find out."
Miss Andrea slammed her fists into the table. "Enough! Enough of this! No one is beating anyone to death. This has gone on for long enough. We need to involve the police. I don't care if it gets all of us locked up. If you don't do it, I will." "Like hell you will. Over my dead body," Miss Jamie said.
"I agree down to the wording with Miss Jamie," he said. "The two of you are being partnered up. You are not to leave each other's side for even a moment. If you can't find the other for even a few minutes, it is now cause to ring the bells."
"Oh, goody," Miss Jamie said. "That's exactly what I needed. More girl time." Peter seemed to grip his cane carefully before getting control of his temper.
"You will be assigned a new patrol schedule with each other. You will both oversee the girls' dorm. For the record, the other pairings are Mr. Bart and Mr. Philip, Mr. Johnny and Mr. Tom, Teresa and myself."
Miss Andrea seemed to count the pairings in her head. "Wait, who does that leave Matthias with?"
"He will join Teresa and me during the day where needed, bunk with Johnny and Tom at night, but mostly he will be accompanied by our newest member of the faculty who will be joining us tomorrow. Or, should I say, rejoining."
Miss Andrea's face went pale. "Headmaster, please don't tell me what I think you're going to tell me." Peter nodded solemnly.
"That's right. I have just gotten off the phone with Mr. Simon. He will be returning to Canaveral first thing tomorrow morning."
"Damn. You're really not messing around," Miss Jamie said.
"I am not," he said. "Mr. Simon is going to have a lot of leeway to do as he sees fit here. He is going to be my right hand. Nothing and no one is off limits for him to investigate. He has been told a full-time position for him is available if he resolves this case."
Silence filled the air. Both of the women looked ready to say something, but Peter simply banged his cane on the floor.
"This is not a discussion," he said, preempting them. Please arrange your shared living quarters and send Johnny and Tom in after yourselves."
The two slowly got up and nervously looked at each other before leaving. He waited until he heard their footsteps fully fade. He looked down at his desk and shook his head. He quietly whispered to himself,
"Have mercy on me, God, in accord with your merciful love. In your abundant compassion, blot out my transgressions. Thoroughly wash away my guilt, and from my sin cleanse me."
In the library of Canaveral, the owls could be heard once again. The room stood completely still as the entire campus was settled down for the night. The first patrol was to be the headmaster and Sister Teresa. In this slow-going patrol, Mary had taken the opportunity to sneak away from her dorm, which now adjoined a room where Miss Andrea and Miss Jamie slept. She stepped into the library and walked down a row of bookshelves. She pulled one slightly out of the way so an alcove was revealed. Judah nervously turned from within the alcove. His body was cramped and he barely fit into it.
"Good, you're here,"
she said. "This is a bad idea. Francis and Rachel were just caught in the library," he said.
"And as a result of that, the utility closet doorknob is now rigged to the bell system. But they don't know about this hiding spot. Let me in."
She pushed her way into the tight alcove, only making it more cramped in there. Judah sweated nervously, his body close to Mary's.
"Will you relax?"
she asked.
"Sometimes you act as if you'd burst into flames if you ever touched a girl. Did you look into what I asked about?"
Yeah, he said, trying to regain his composure. "It's not good. I found some stuff in the archives while on filing duty. Mr. Simon used to be something of a disciplinarian here."
"For Pete's sake," she said. "Isn't that what all of them are?"
He shook his head. "Worse than you're thinking. He was like a detective, actively seeking out any evidence against students. He would change the rules on a whim. He was dead set on making sure all students got punishment, not just the bad ones." Mary rolled her eyes at his phrasing. He continued. "He had a long-standing feud with this one student, Jean. He was slippery, put into Canaveral because he kept busting out of his local juvenile detention to the point that people were ready to give up on him and put him in real prison. He was always one step ahead of Mr. Simon, and it killed him inside. The day before Jean was about to turn 18, it was reported that he taunted the disciplinarian, said it was too late now to get him." Judah's voice trailed off. He shook his head. "The next day, the boys' dorm awoke to screaming as Mr. Simon brought an axe down on Jean's head as he slept. On the day he should have been let go, he was murdered. Mr. Simon was fired the same day, but the boy was reported as a runaway. Since it was his 18th birthday, there was nothing for the police to investigate, as he was within his rights to leave." Mary shook her head.
"This is really bad, Judah. I have to get back and get the girls prepared for this. I've done so much to try to shield them, and now all of that's going to come crumbling down."
She pushed out the bookshelf and started to run back towards the dorm, but she was grabbed by her wrist. "Hey," Judah said. "We had a deal. I gave you what you wanted, now give me what I wanted." Mary looked down and bit her lip, hoping that he might have forgotten the terms of this exchange. Seeing that he had not, she reached into her back pocket. She seemed to secretly clutch something in her hand. Judah's eyes seemed to widen. Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of Canaveral Academy for Challenged Youth. If you enjoyed, please rate the podcast, give it a like on YouTube, or share with someone who you think might also enjoy. You can stay up to date with Canaveral Academy for Challenged Youth by following us on social media. That'll be D Squared Stories on just about any of the major platforms. Thanks again for listening, and I hope to have you listen again next week.